to the session about Miradi Software, which we're titling Miradi Software, Now Online and More Awesome Than Ever. We have three facilitators helping out with today's call. So myself, Nick Salafsky with Foundations of Success in Miradi Software. Kari Stiles it's 3 in the morning, I believe, for her, so she's not getting up for this, but she got up to start the meeting, so she gets a credit for that. And then Felix Cybulla is also going to be working with me on this presentation today. So we have 3 objectives for today's session. One is to help you learn about and try out recent updates to Miradi Software. We also want you to learn about and hopefully provide input into future Miradi roadmap. And then the ultimate outcome is to be inspired to use Miradi for your projects and programs, if it seems appropriate. To do that, we're going to do a bunch of things. We're going to start with an intro for 15 minutes. Then we're going to give you a plenary overview of the new Miradi features. And then the core of this thing is an experiment. We're going to try something called the Miradi Challenge, where we're going to put you in groups to try it yourself, to go through a bit of a challenge course. Then we'll end up with a preview of coming attractions, talk about Miradi's new pricing structure, and we'll finish with the evaluation that CCNet likes us to do. So that's what we're trying to cover today. We'll start right with this intro. So Miradi, as many of you know, I assume many of you are familiar with Miradi, and we are going to make an assumption here. But one thing is, if you haven't already done so, it would be helpful for you to go to Miradi.org and create a free account and put your account name and email in the Zoom chat. If you already have an account, don't worry about it. Then we'll get to it when we get to the challenge. We are going to assume that all of you are familiar with the open standards, which you know have been evolving, the conservation standards. So we went from version 3.0 to version 4.0 and all the steps in the standards, and it continues to evolve. As you probably know, but as is changing, the basic unit of conservation work is a strategy pathway. So it's an action that people are taking to reach some outcome. There's some intermediate results, and then you get a threat reduction result. And it's a series of linked factors leading to an outcome. You're going to have a bunch of activities, and then you're going to have a bunch of goals and objectives that you're going to track as well. And so there are attributes of factors. So that's really the basic unit of conservation work. Conservation strategy pathways sit in what we call a project. So a project is a group of people trying to accomplish something. So there's a team, and they may be doing one or more of these strategy pathways that they're trying to get done to change the world. And now we're going to start, as we get into this presentation, to think about a new term or a newer term called a program. It's a higher level program. So you might have that project. Let's say maybe people are trying to restore wetlands or something. There's going to be a bunch of sibling projects, and they're going to be organized both for administrative or for funding purposes into something called a program. But a program is also, in its own right, a higher level project of its own trying to accomplish things. And so as we go through this, we're going to be talking about both projects and programs, and we want you to be cognizant of that difference. As you all probably know, good practice going through these standards involves integrating the conservation standards into business processes and systems. And so this is a couple slides from Annette Stewart, who developed the idea originally. But basically, if you think about those conservation standards we're all familiar with, they're really a business process that people are going through. And so you're assessing, planning, implementing, et cetera. And your organization or your program or whatever you're working in is probably going through a bunch of other parallel business processes, fundraising, financial management, people management, all those different things that you need to do to get your work done. One of the things that we found over the years is that organizations invest a lot of resources, time, and treasure in business IT systems. So it's hard to imagine most organizations not having a financial planning system or a donor management system or a workforce management system. So organizations invest in that. But until recently, if you ask people in conservation, how do you manage your core work, the stuff that's most essential to what you're doing, those conservation standards, when people did that, they said, well, we do it using email, or we'll use PowerPoint and Word documents or tables or Excel files. There's not really a dedicated way to think about doing your conservation work. So Miradi was developed in part to help fill that need, to be a software tool that helps people implement the conservation standards. As you can see here, it really helps people do 3 different things: manage individual projects more effectively, combine projects into programs, and learning from others. And so what we're going to do is talk about in this presentation all three of those things, but we're going to start with some of the developments that are related to managing individual projects more effectively. So just a little bit of history. Some of you have probably been along for this entire journey, so you probably know a lot of this, but it's interesting to revisit the history. Miradi started as a desktop software platform in about 2005. And one of our models was TurboTax. This idea that here in the United States, when you have to fill out your complicated taxes, you get a software program that walks you step by step through the process of doing your taxes and also gives you the forms to fill out. And so when Miradi Desktop was first developed, and we did it as desktop software, because back then, not everybody had the internet or the cloud or all those things that we take for granted today or try to take for granted today, they didn't really exist back then. And so we built it as a desktop platform, and you can see it had that interview mode up on top, which was walking you through your steps in what was then the open standards. And it gave you the tools to do things like threat analysis or to come up with your situation diagrams and capture all that information. Because it was desktop, all that information would sit locally on your system and really not be shared with anybody else. But even very early on, we started to notice that it wasn't just a diagramming tool, but it was also turning to a data collection tool. For example, we created this ability to call your threats by the standard IUCN CMP classifications. And when you labeled things by the standard classifications, all of a sudden you had a database of what were the threats that your particular project might be facing. So we, in 2013, began moving Miradi online. And Miradi Share, which was really the first online version of this stuff, really took on a role more like Dropbox, where you would do the work locally in Miradi Desktop, and then you would upload it to the cloud where other people could at least see your information, although you really couldn't edit and interact with it. So we built it as moving from Dropbox. But over time, people were kind of frustrated with that. That whole check-in, check-out process is fairly cumbersome. And there was a desire to be more like where the rest of the world is going, to Google Docs, where you can be working directly online. So in 2019, we released Miradi Share 2.0, which is now morphing into Miradi itself, and it's this more Google Docs type paradigm. So as you probably know, there's a new modern interface. You can edit things directly online. So we started with things just like the project summary, editable information in place. One of the things that happens when you get it online is you also have to be able to control who can be a part of that project, who can see it. So now we have this ability to add team members, and you give people different roles, access. So you could be an editor, or you could be a project manager. You can make your information public or not public and control who sees that information. What we're really excited about, and what took us a while, so thank you for your patience in bearing with us, is we were able to move to be able to do diagramming online. And we're pleased to announce that as of today, with just a small couple exceptions, we're almost complete with full online diagramming. And so as we'll show you, and you'll get a chance to practice, we have this ability to create now and manage diagrams completely online. And you can also manage and your progress updates and results. You'll learn about this, but you can update both your activities and your results, how you're doing over time. And then you can take and display information, for example, how you're doing on your goals and objectives. And again, we'll show you all this in more detail as we go forward. So you can add measurements, you can add future statuses and things like that. Because we took it online, we started to be able to do some things that we could never even do in the desktop. For example, basic spatial mapping. So you have this ability here now to create points, lines, or polygons that represent your scope or your targets or your threats or all the different aspects of your Miradi work. This is a really good example, though, with online mapping. We're not trying to compete with Google Maps or with Esri or some of the things that do really sophisticated GIS programs. That's not our intent. There's no way we could ever compete with those guys. What we're trying to do here is give people enough of a mapping capability so that they can at least get things expressed spatially and then build links to those systems so that you can do more sophisticated GIS analysis online. As we'll talk about at the end, that's really kind of what we're trying to do with the development of Miradi, is find this sweet spot where we're building the right things that practitioners need, but also making Miradi part of a wider IT ecosystem where it links to other tools and other things people are doing. Another thing that projects can do is they can do report generation. So you can write a simple script or use an existing script that might look something like this, run it against all the Miradi files in your program, and create up-to-date reports about what's going on with all the data up-to-date and information in there. So there's a lot of much more powerful things that we can do by taking Miradi online. So that's really the very fast introduction to Miradi and what we're trying to accomplish. What I'm going to do now is turn it over to Felix, and Felix is going to give you a more detailed plenary overview of new Miradi features. If you have any questions along the way, please just put them in the chat. We'll try to monitor the chat and get to your questions. And then stay tuned, because in about 25 minutes, you are going to be undertaking the Miradi challenge. So be ready for the Miradi challenge. So Felix, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back to you.
Thank you, Nick. Let me quickly share my screen here. Okay, should be coming up now. Yeah, if you can monitor the chat and also keep admitting people to the call,
yep.
That would be great. Thank you. All right, as Nick mentioned, this will be a semi-fast overview of the features that we have currently implemented in the Miradi online world, and we're going to give you a little bit of an outlook of what we're currently having on the development side. This is again very likely too fast for you to follow along, but you will get a chance later on, almost an hour, to play with it in groups, and we jump from group to group, helping out a little bit, and yeah. So this is more like a lean back type of exercise and watching. If you are, and I'm going to assume that you're really new to Miradi, so for those of you who have played around with the online version a lot, especially lately, yeah, you have to sort of like listen for the little clues that we give here and there for maybe some hidden features that you haven't discovered yet. So when you first log in, or whenever you log into your account, you see up here my name that I'm logged in. This is what you're going to see. Down or up here in the upper left-hand corner under My Project, if you click on that, there's a drop-down that shows you all of your standalone projects and also your programs. And as I think everyone is well aware, a program hosts multiple projects. So projects can either be standalone or under an umbrella program, so to speak. We have created for this particular session here for the rally, we have created our own program under which we have mirrored or duplicated projects. So we give each group their individual project so you can work in it. I'm going to use exactly that also for this little demo. All right, so moving over to the Miradi demo project template. Remember that I'm now at the project level, not at the program level. If we zoom up to the program level, there's different editable or edit capabilities. We're now zoomed into the project level. You can add your photos up here, so they show up in a little photo reel, making it look pretty and nice. And if you scroll down, you see all of the different tabs up here, the major tabs, and then under each major tab, there are sub-tabs up here. We start off with the summary, very basic stuff, project summary, progress updates, some of the metrics that are generated from the data that is within the project. I just want to quickly show you the team members section, because here you can admit people to your team or to this particular project team. You can set the roles depending on what type of role you want people to have, if it's just a viewer or an editor or a manager. And also here is where you set the project access. So right now, this program or the project can only be viewed by people who are on the team and no one outside. But you do have the possibility to set your project public, and we, as you know, have been and will always encourage that for other people to explore your projects and programs and basically learn. Of course, the critical data like financial data and some other data points are not visible to the public even when you set your project to public. All right, another feature that some of you may remember from the earlier versions, as Nick has showed, is the timeline. The timeline is still available, basically giving you what we call snapshots of the past throughout the evolution of your project or your program. And you can restore to any of these project snapshots at any given time. You can also download those projects for working in Miradi Desktop. Miradi Desktop still exists, obviously. You can still download it, you can still work with it, but much of the work will shift online, and and soon we hope that if you choose to do that, you can work fully online and don't have to go back to desktop. Project snapshots, getting back to those. can be created at any given point. So you can always create your own snapshot, especially before maybe making big changes. Going into a workshop where you might be developing new results chains or a new situation analysis with a different team, or deleting, old stuff out of a very complex project. You might want to take a snapshot prior to that, so that in case you deleted any important information, you can always go back and retrieve that information, right? All right, this is everything that we intend to show you from the overview. We're going to quickly now switch over to online diagramming. As Nick has mentioned, this is one of the major features that we have been developing throughout the last days, weeks, and months. So we're gonna focus our little presentation here mostly on that, and then show you a few other points that we think are of interest to you. You remember this view, obviously. We are in the situation analysis part, situation model here. The color coding remained the same. The layout is slightly different. So this is the new online look. You can always switch back to the desktop look. That may look a little bit more familiar to some of you. This is the new online look, a little bit lighter, a little bit something fresh, something new. But yeah, this is just for the looks. Exactly. So for most of the presentation, I'm going to do that in the results chain. So I'm going to switch over. You see here situation model, results chain. You switch up here. Now we're in the theory of change tab. And if we switched back to the situation model here, or going over the major tab up here, you would switch back to situation assessment. All right. I'm going to scroll down just a teeny bit, move my controls out of the way up here. Moving over to the next results chain. As in Miradi Desktop, there's multiple results chains or situation analysis diagram pages that are that you can host in the same project. You can switch through those by the little arrows down here, or by the drop down up here. So you have the results chain, just the one that I just started out with, which we'll show you later for the challenge course. And we're going to do much of this presentation in the red elimination results chain, but you could switch up here as well as down here via the little arrow control. Yeah, and this is sort of like the new layout. You have a navigation bar on the left, you have one on the right, and you have the top bar up here, giving you a gazillion functions actually. One that I've shown you is the color palette. That is always the same. There is some more helping features up here. For example, we now allow a grid view to help you align that. That was a feature that was available in desktop but was quite hidden. And so now we have that little grid, so you can move things and sort of like align them along a grid. And you also see those little dynamic helper lines that appear whenever I align to another element. You can either use those, or you go up to layout and say snap to the grid, and then those lines will not anymore come, and you see that little jumping movement of the box as it goes from one cell to the other. So that's basically up to the users. I usually use just a smart layout and keep it a little bit cleaner using that grid only and those helper lines. All right, so you see that we have an empty result, intermediate result box right here. I'm going to delete that one and basically create a new one. On the left-hand side here are all of the features that you use, for example, to add and control your factors and the visibility of those. So if we click on add factors, you see that all of these elements, the diagram elements that we know from the standards world, you drag and drop it out and you create it, and it takes a millisecond to be created, and it immediately jumps the cursor, so you can basically start typing away, and you're done, and you have your first element on your diagram. If you want to rename it, I quickly I do a click on the element, and it already directly goes into the editing feature. So you don't have to double click it. There is a pop-up opening, then you change the name field or the detail field. So we set that for any of these boxes, whenever you do a double click, it switches to editing the text itself. It's really just typing text. There's no editing or font editing feature right there, but I'll show you where to do that. But that's a really nice quick feature to have that. All right, visibility. So now that we have created our intermediate results, we can maneuver through the visibility, or we can change the visibility for any of the elements in the diagram just as before, and we can also assign tags, also just like in Miradi. The tag management system is much improved, so you can now either show you all tags or only the tags belonging to that one diagram that you're working in, enabling you to do either or, which is actually quite nice. All right. Last but not least, the diagram properties. So these are the properties of the diagram itself. So this is also where you can delete a diagram. You can create new diagrams up here, and you can delete a single diagram up here. And you can also go into the edit feature here and edit the name, the ID field, or the details to your diagram, right? Progress updates I'll show in just a minute, and then the classifications are down here as well, right? So this is everything around the entire diagram. If you want to go into editing that particular single element, all of that happens on the right-hand side. So if you select you see how those two elements up here, or the three elements actually, go gray or black from using them or not. So I highlight an element, and then that enables me to go into the factor properties, pop them out, and do all of the changes that I need or want to do on that factor. So I can edit the name, details, comments, evidence nodes, and also the results update down here, right? We can add that. If we want to change any of the styling, so we can change the font color, we can change, just like before, the size of the style, that all happens here. And by the way, you can do that from multiple factors at the same time. So I select multiple factors at the same time, and that enables me to now change that color or the font style or the size for all of them at the same time. Yeah, that's pretty nice. Another little feature that some of you may have spotted already, once you have selected multiple elements, you get alignment quick links or quick buttons up here, so you can align all of those elements to the right, to the left, to the center, top or bottom, helping you with a very quick and efficient layouting for the diagrams, making them look nice and shiny and ready for presentation, right? So if you may have noticed, the only thing that doesn't hover or become black when I select an element is that little arrow down here, and that is simply because that belongs to the properties and the styling to the linkages, the arrows. That you can do here. For uncertainty, you can make it a dotted line or make it a solid line. If it's not certain, if it's very certain. Just as before in desktop, right? Okay, so much until here. So this is the left-hand side and the right-hand side of those bars. You may have also seen that once I select a factor or an element on the diagram page, you get those little quick buttons up here, and they are essentially the same buttons as your diagram or factor properties and factor stylings up here. This is the right click. The right click option. So you can create incoming junctions, outgoing junctions, just like before, and do the copy to, share, or move features, which I'm going to show you. And you get also the little arrow, which, as the name suggests, lets you draw an arrow to another element and connect it to that particular element, right? Some of you, or I hope everyone remembers bend points. Back in the days in desktop, you would create a bend point to an arrow to make it bend. These days are kind of gone because it's very dynamic. You just drag and drop those little points here, they appear as soon as you create a new bend. Two more appear to allow you to edit or drag those lines. And if you need a squirrely line, well, there you have it. I'm going to delete that one. And I'm going to delete this one. Perfect. Nick, I see there's 21 messages in the chat. I hope, is there anything urgent that you want me to address now? Otherwise, I'd move to progress.
No, I think I'm able to keep the chat coming. So I'll monitor it, Felix, and
okay. Great.
So let me just say one thing. There are a lot of great requests for features and things like that, and we really love the requests for features. It's what we build into trying to improve the software over time. So keep them coming.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Yeah, and I think, yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, one more thing I want to show is either by using the shortcut Command C or Control C for copy and Control V for pasting, or using the right click menu or the two-finger click on a trackpad if you're on a Mac. That allows you to copy an element, and it says factor is copied to the clipboard. And if you now want to paste it, let's assume we want to paste it on the same diagram, it allows you to do either a share or a copy. And it's again like in desktop, but I'm going to repeat it because I'm not sure if everyone knows or remembers that feature. If you share it, it basically becomes a mirrored element. So all of the changes on one diagram page will be reflected on that same element on a separate or on a different diagram page. You cannot share to the same diagram page. So if you want to copy paste in the very same diagram, it will always be a copy. So if I copy this one and paste it, the only option, like I'm clicking up here, it doesn't allow me to share it. The only option I have is to copy. And what is really nice is it also asks me if I want to copy it standalone or including the indicators and the objectives in case there were any indicators or objectives associated to that factor, right? But I could now also, copy it using Command C, move over to the next results chain page, and basically paste it here. And then it would allow me to also share it. I can also do a copy, so it remains, separated. The link is cut, and any change or edits or changes to the element will not be reflected on the other page or on the original page. Or I create a shared element, and that basically makes it, a mirrored image or a mirrored element. And you see how the font sort of changes to cursive, which is the same behavior as in desktop. In case you didn't know, that's how you can track if it's a mirrored image or a linked shared element. Sorry. All right, so much for the sharing. I'm going to move over to progress. As you see, there's a lot of these little progress spotlights, as we call them, attached to many of the elements. If we use our ABC element right here, you also see that you get those previews to objective signal markers or indicator markers or progress markers. So if you actually wanted to add an objective here, we could simply click on that and relatively quickly add either a new or add a copy from an existing objective to that box. And the same holds true for the indicators. We could create our indicator here and also add the results status if you wanted to do that. Okay. In Miradi Share, we basically allow the tracking of actions, of results, of objectives and goals, and of your indicator measurements. That's nothing new to those of you who have been with Miradi Desktop recently. That's what is new is that we also now allow all of that in the online world, which is great. And so, if, for example, we go into the properties of our strategy, you see here the summary of the strategy and also the progress updates. So you can update the progress of your strategy up in the factor properties. And then for the activities, if you wanted to create an activity for that strategy, you would do that right here. And then for each of the activities, the same holds true. You would update your progress status either directly over the little icon or via the factor properties, and that would allow you to add another progress update, right? And always the latest progress status icon would be reflected on your little element on the diagram, which obviously makes sense. So that's strategy. Activity, we do allow the same, obviously, for the progress of your intermediate results, and then going towards threat and threat reduction, same thing. Full stop. And this is all, by the way, you see that I'm not changing the view, so this is all doable directly from the diagram page. You don't have to navigate away. You can, however, also do that via the, let me quickly scroll up here a little bit, via the progress path, and that allows you to do exactly, manage your progress tracking for all of those individual streams, let's say, up here. But for the quick status update, you can do that directly in your diagrams, enabling you to be much quicker and much faster and more efficient with that, without having to switch in between the views, right? Just collecting my thoughts here. Same holds true for the indicators, and you see that little key arrow, key icon for the viability mode. This is key ecological attribute mode. If we go into the factor properties of your target, you can set the viability mode right here from simple to key attribute. You have your nested targets just like in desktop, and you can also directly in your diagram track and edit your viability status, right? And you will do that here. Okay. Let me quickly close the door. I'm sorry, someone's sleeping outside. All right. So, and with that, we have covered almost the entirety of the features that are immediately visible only on the diagram page, right? If you, by the way, if you need to have a little bit more space, you can always go into full screen, especially if you're working on a smaller laptop like I am right now. You can always increase your workspace by going into full screen, and then going back to normal view. And again, as before, you can always export the current view into an image file and SVG. We are working on offering more export options. These are the ones that we currently allow. All right, so I'm going to move away now from the
Actually, Felix, this is kind of important. This is one thing I'm going to say here is if you want to export and you want it to look like the same size, it exports exactly whatever it shows you in the canvas. So if you have a lot of white space, you could shrink your screen size and get it right down to the size of your diagram. So you just actually make your whole screen a little smaller and get it to the right size, and you'll get exactly what you want.
Very true. Yeah, very true. Yeah, good point. Yeah, and so this was like all of the edits that we have now showed you were done directly from the diagram page. But if you wanted to do, or if you wanted to have more control, not more control, but a different look, especially for target viability that I've just shown you, you can go into the tree view. It has its own little tab up here, and from here you can, throughout your entire project, throughout all of the different diagram pages, you can track and edit your viability of all of your targets directly here. If you have a large project, whenever there is this little search bar up here, make sure to really try it out. It's very smart. For example, now I'm just typing mangrove, and it shows me everything that has to do with mangroves. So that allows you to very quickly navigate throughout all of your elements in the entirety of your project and or program even. And yeah, find those elements that you're looking for and then do the changes to them, right? So if we want to do a change to the reef, we go right here, maybe change it from key attribute to simple and then do our edit, or change the viability status right here from good to very good or something like that. Okay, so this is the target viability view. You see the threat analysis, and if I click on it now, so everything that I've shown you right now is live and online. So if you log in, this is exactly what you get. These are all the features that we currently have tested and that are working and that are ready for the public. So this is everything that you get right now. You will also see that threat analysis button, and this is what you see right now. It's only a depiction from the threat analysis that was done in Miradi Desktop. But, and I can give you a little bit of a sneak preview. Oh, that's very interesting. Nick, apparently the developers have even implemented it in the real world now. But I was going to show you the threat rating capabilities on our little developers site. So this is the replica of the online world where we test out new features. I'm going to do it here because I don't want to mess anything up. I don't know. And so whenever you click on a target threat relationship, it allows you to edit those the ratings for the different criteria. And if you're unsure what severity was, again, you can always, as before, click on it, get the descriptions for the criteria, and especially in workshops, that helps if you want to remind people what exactly they should be focusing on. And those cells that are locked are obviously those that don't have a connection. And so this is the development side. So this is what I would have said that this is what we will be implementing very soon. And now apparently we have already implemented it. So go check it out. Apparently it's been tested and released this weekend then, because we've completed the test last week, Friday. And so it's online right now, which is great news. So you can do your threat rating online as of now. That's great. Cool. So this is the threat rating. So we've done situation assessment, we've done viability, and we've done the threat analysis.
Felix, maybe a minute or two more.
Yeah, exactly. I quickly want to go over the progress for the very end, showing you the progress tracking, giving the system here a few moments to load. We have action tracking and the results tracking and the impact tracking. And for action and the time frame, we also have a visual depiction in the form of a chart. So if we go to action tracking, or let's say results tracking, because we've been talking about that, you see our new element up here, ABC. Doesn't have a result status just yet because we haven't set one, but here is where you could also do that, those edits, if you, especially for bulk changes or bulk edits, if you wanted to go through the entire project, you would very likely go to the progress, high-level progress tab, and then choosing the action tracking or results tracking to do your edits right in here. And again, if you wanted, like right now, we're only looking at the rat elimination results chain page, but you could also say, show me all results chains, and that gives you a very long list of all of your elements for all of the results chains. And if that becomes overwhelming, again, we could simply use the search function, and then you would very quickly filter out those elements that are of importance to you, and you can do your edits and be done with it. All right. And that covers it.
Thank you, Felix. Okay, I'm going to jump over and take back control here and share my screen again. So now we've been talking a lot at you. Here's your chance to actually try it. So let me go back to my PowerPoint here real quick. So we're going to move on to the Miradi challenge. Try it yourself. So here's what we're going to do. And we were only expecting about 20 or 30 people in this session. We got 75 signed up. I think we have 60 on here, so bear with us as we try to deal with this and work with it. This is an experiment. It could fail miserably, but we're going to try. You are going to be assigned to a breakout group. We want everyone in the group to introduce themselves to each other. And then we want one person who has a valid Miradi account and a decent internet connection to share their screen and log into the projects page of the Miradi demo program. I'll show you that in a second. And then you're going to click on the project that corresponds to your Zoom breakout group number. So if you're in breakout room 4, you're going to go to project number 4. And then as I'll show you, you're going to navigate to the theory of change menu, and you should see RC0, the Miradi challenge course results chain. So I'm in this Miradi demonstration program. You can see the programs by room 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's say I'm in group 4. I'm going to go to room 4. And in room 4, once this loads, you will see in room 4 here, going a little slower today. So in room 4, the project summary, you're going to navigate to the theory of change. So this theory of change will load. And on this theory of change, you will see the framework for the Miradi challenge course. This is about to load. And so here you can see down here, if I scroll down, and I may have to zoom in a little bit, you can see that there are 3 different pathways: a beginner pathway, an intermediate pathway, and an expert pathway. We want you to work together and start at the beginner pathway and go to the very first activity. And so if you zoom in here, it says the very first activity, and you're sharing, one of you is sharing your screen and navigating it. You can see here, so if you see it here, find our first target in the space above and change it to your favorite animal. So you're going to go to your first target and you're going to rename it as your favorite animal. Then you're going to add a new target. And then you're going to go through the steps in the pathway here. As you complete each clump of activities, you will get a result that you will achieve, and you will look at that result. So you're going to kind of work your way through the pathway as a team. As you go through, as you can see in B9 here, we can also then report your progress. So you can come in here and change your progress status. So our progress here might be completed, or maybe we had issues with this, and you can put a note about that. So you're going to use Miradi to actually go through the pathway. All right. So as a group, go through the steps in the challenge course, track your progress using the Miradi activities and results progress tracking features. This is important. Please only have one person or 2 at most active in the Miradi file. Miradi is not designed like Miro or Mural or some of these, whiteboarding programs where you can have 20 people working on a diagram. The thing about Miradi is not just a diagram, it's an underlying database. And so there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. And so it's really more designed to be more like in a traditional facilitation room where one person is sharing, other people are then providing input and discussing. So please have only 1 or 2 people active in the Miradi file. If you have any issues or need help, please have one person leave the breakout room and come back to the plenary to talk to the facilitator. And you have about 40 minutes to get as far as your group can. So we want good luck with that. We're going to put you into groups. We had 70 people signed up, so we do have 3 or 4 people per group. If you happen to end up, because there's 15 people who haven't shown up, if you happen to end up with a group of only 1 person, come back to the plenary and we'll assign you back to a different room. Someone asked a question in the chat: is Miradi, can it move faster? Can it work faster? Sometimes there's a bit of a delay, as you've seen here. We are working on that, and hopefully next year, we're going to try to move Miradi into the Microsoft cloud, and hopefully it'll work a lot faster. So in the meantime, it does communicate with a server in Seattle. There can be some lag times. And so that's why you'll see some delays. We are aware of that, and that's something that we're going to be working on and hoping to try to make better in the near future. Okay, so with that, we're going to set you off and open up the breakout groups. And you can note which group you're supposed to be in. Everyone see that here? Everyone note what group they're in? And we're going to open up the breakout rooms. Felix, can you do that?
Yeah, I can do it. Just a quick note that Quinn, I put you into room 1 because you were alone in your room, and Harriet, you also were alone. So I bundled the 2 of you, so you're both number 1 now. And Erica, in your group, there is Erica and James. Your group also has Caroline, who will be 15 minutes late. Just let me know in a private chat, just so you know. And yeah, we can assign people now.
Okay, and we're going to reconvene at 20 past the hour. And if you need a break, if you need to get some coffee or whatever you need to do, then take your break as part of your group. And then we'll reconvene in plenary at 20 past the hour to talk about the results. A lot of this has to do with evidence. And so evidence is one of these things that people kind of struggle with. What is the evidence, for example, that we have a rat that might be affecting our seabirds? And will those boat barriers actually lead to improvement of the health of the seabirds that we care about? So there's been a lot of thinking. There's a paper that CMP published. There's a book that's coming out that I've been working on. And then some work with some Parks Canada, some of our partners in Parks Canada, thinking about ways of bringing evidence into conservation practice. So evidence is the data, information, knowledge, and wisdom used to assess one or more assumptions related to a question of interest. You can see that there's sort of this link of data, information, knowledge, and wisdom in this pyramid. And you want to get information from case-specific examples and synthesize that to build knowledge, and then use that knowledge to come down and inform ongoing practice. So one of the things that we're trying to invent is a language that we can put into Miradi to actually talk about this and think about this. And so we're having this idea of analytical questions. So they are sort of the way of framing what you need to know, but to apply evidence them, you actually need to articulate them as assumptions. And so it's this idea that we have in our world, we have existing evidence, and then we can also acquire and generate new evidence. So there's sort of a temporal axis in which we can think about evidence. And then we also have evidence from inside our project or program and evidence from outside our project or program. So there's these sort of two different graphs. And that leads to 4 quadrants. There's our specific evidence base, what we know about our program already, which relates to claims that we might be making about our work. There's the generic evidence base, what the rest of the world knows about what we're doing. And then there's obviously an interplay of what we're doing specifically will feed what's happening generically. And then there's information we might have to collect in the future. And we're drawing a distinction of 2 kinds of assumptions. Claims are about what we already know. Hypotheses are about things we don't know yet that we're going to have to acquire information through monitoring or through collaborative learning. And so there's this sort of link, there's this evolution over time as we get more information about our work, those hypotheses turn into claims and we have evidence for what's going on. That's very, very theoretical, I understand, but let's see what this actually would start to look like in Miradi. So if you have a theory of change, so you say we have our theory of change about how we have seabirds, they're being predated by rats, and we're worried about reintroduction of rats to islands and the vessels. What we'd like to be able to do in Miradi, and this will be coming in the next few months, is put those claims or put those assumptions, those learning needs, what is the projected status of seabirds, and then have a more specific hypothesis or claim, articulation of the assumption below it. And it could be relation to the status of a factor, like you see here, what is the status of seabirds? But there might be also a learning need about, are rats a threat? And so you would have a hypothesis or a claim, rat nest predation is the major threat to our seabird populations. And so it's about either factors or the relationship between factors that this is causing problems over here through nest predation. So we're going to allow you to float in Miradi these claim bubbles, these assumption bubbles. We can also do them in a theory of change pathway. So is rat eradication effective? And then based on that, we're going to create a summary table form. It might look something like this, where in addition to progress, you might have your questions and assumptions. So here's our analytical questions. Here's our assumptions. And then we can put our summary of evidence for the assumption, our confidence in that assumption, the implications of what it's going to require us to do for action, and then additional information needs. And these information needs become the basis of your monitoring plan or your learning plan going forward. I could spend probably a couple hours talking about this, so this is just a little teaser, but this is how we're starting to think about evidence and learning and integrating evidence and learning into one integrated feature in Miradi. The other thing I want to show you from a learning perspective, some of you have probably seen this before, but it's this idea that we have standard classifications, just like E.O. Wilson can show you an ant with a type specimen on it. That's the basis for biology. And as you know, if we have a specific action, so say we're trying to do community guards somewhere in the Caribbean to have illegal egg collecting reduced, we can have our theory of change. We can have a bunch of indicators that we can collect about that specific pathway that's taking place in the world. We have maybe some similar work going on in Africa, where we're working on community ranger patrols to stop illegal pangolin poaching being reduced. So here we have 2 specific actions that we could maybe look up and find in Miradi. And then we can take them and boil them together and create a generic action. So this is a theory of change for a community and patrols and guard strategy and what that looks like, and understand where the conditions it works, where does it not work. So it's this iteration between the specific actions, what people are doing at real world sites, and the generic action, which is the theory of how this thing actually works. And so our challenge in conservation from an evidence point of view is that when people do syntheses and systematic reviews, right now they're relying primarily on the published literature, which is a small fraction of overall case experience. And what we really want to be able to do is get into those evidence conversations all that dark matter that's only available in org records or field notebooks or not even documented. And so we think we need two evidence libraries to meet this challenge. We need a library of specific conservation actions, maybe with a spatial interface. And then we need a library of generic conservation actions with outcomes and measures. And what we're hoping Miradi can become is both of those libraries, where we have examples of specific real world work that people are doing under shared projects. And we already have created the CAML library as a collection of generic templates or patterns. Some of you are familiar with this. There's a whole presentation about this, but it's that library of those generic actions that we can build up and improve over time. So that's a lot of in a hurry about how we think Miradi is contributing to not just project management, but also program management, and then also the learning that's happening over time. So Miradi does all these different things, assuming people use it and it makes sense for folks. Let me pause real briefly there. Is there anything in the chat, Felix, that we should pay attention to? Anything people are worried about?
Nope, we've managed to reply to a few minor questions.
Okay, well then in the last few minutes, I want to talk a little bit about the business end of things and talk a little bit about Miradi's new pricing structure, see if there's any questions, and then we'll wrap up the session with the evaluation. So Miradi's business model, Miradi is user-supported software. So way back in 2005, when we started this, we got an initial investment from a few founding organizations. So WWF, TNC, FOS, Rare, I believe, and a couple people kicked in 100K each, 25K each. And we used that to build an initial proof of concept. We then got some grants from the Packard Foundation, from the Hewlett Foundation, and then from the Moore Foundation. We got some grants to build up the basic platform. But they basically said to us, we're not going to give you huge grants to support this forever. It needs to be user supported to live. So starting in 2008, we basically lived off our user supported fees, aka the subscriptions that you all paid for ongoing maintenance and improvements. So we depend on those subscription fees in order to be able to keep building all the cool things that you saw today. Miradi Desktop is a open source subscription supported software. And we had rates of $300 per year for user standard subscription, $120 for low income, and free for anyone who told us they couldn't or wouldn't be able to pay. And then Miradi Share was also a open source program, a subscription on a per organizational basis. Now that we're moving fully online, we have to change our pricing and our business model a bit. Because when you're selling desktop software, you can charge per user, each person some funds to use to get a subscription to put the desktop on their software. When it came time to be thinking about Miradi Online, we had to change our model, and we did a little bit of research. And I want to kind of show you this as an example of how we got to where we ended up. When we look at the software as a service, so people like Salesforce or Asana or Slack or Jira or Canvas or Zoom, you can break them into 4 quadrants. And so some of these software programs are primarily used to enter data, like your time tracking software or your Salesforce software. And so you're entering a bunch of data. And then some programs are more about coordination and collaboration. And then some programs are primarily aimed at users inside the host organization that's owning the software. And then others are used outside. So as an example, Replicon, which is our time tracking project software, it's only for people who work for FOS. And if I hire a new FOS staff member, I'm willing to buy them a new seat. I'm willing to have them come and pay a seat because I need them to fill out their timesheets. And so there's incentive for me to pay Replicon for each additional person that I hire. But if you think about how Zoom works, or if you think about Miro or some of these more collaborative programs, you don't want to have to charge someone just to come and work at my workshop and join my Zoom call, or to work on a Canvas in a Miro or a Mural type of thing. So they're much more about collaboration. And in those models, you want to be able to pay to host people and bring them to your party, bring them to the room where you're working. And we found that that was much more what we thought Miradi Share was going to be. So we're moving to this model of, instead of having to have a license to our subscription to be able to use the desktop, we're asking people that you take out a subscription if you want to host a collaborative project that you want other people, or program that you want other people to come in and play in and be able to work in. So in these cases, the owner is willing to buy licenses for creators and viewers. In these cases, the owner wants to invite outsiders to play with the content, but does not want licenses to be a barrier. And we think we're, with Miradi, much more in that space. So if you go to the subscriptions tab in Miradi, you'll see this window here. And we're offering 3 kinds of subscriptions. So free, which is what you guys have signed up for, most of you have signed up for, basically gets you started. And with a free subscription, you can view any project that someone shares with you, and you can update projects, or you can edit things that other people have created, invited me to edit, and I'll get some basic email support. So these are for all your project partners or people you want to be looking at your data, sharing stuff. You want them to have that free license. Just like in Zoom, you can come and join a Zoom call. You need this free license so Miradi knows who you are, but so you can come and enter and play with someone else's data and work on the system. The individual subscription is more like the old desktop subscription. And that's $300 a year, but we've dropped the low income pricing to $60 a year for low income, and there's a free trial there. And with the individual, you can view you can do everything you could do with a free license, but you can also create and manage and share unlimited projects for viewing. You can get standard report templates, and you get a Miradi desktop subscription if you want to keep using Miradi desktop. So basically, that gives you the ability to create files that you're going to work on yourself, and you can have as many of those projects as you want. If you want to work collaboratively, though, then you have to move over to the team and program-based subscription. And in the team and program-based subscription, there you're creating projects that you want to invite other people to come play on. And so if you look at the pricing here, it's priced per collaborative project. So this is a little bit confusing, so but bear with me. You can share projects for collaborative team editing. You get a dedicated program space, custom program homepage and access permissions. You get the classifications. You can do the project to program links, a whole bunch of other things that you get to play around with. But we're pricing this not by numbers of users, but by numbers of active shared projects. So you can have as many scratch projects, kind of, just basic projects that you're not sharing with other people, or that you're not having other people edit. You can have as many of those as you want. But we're going to start to meter or count the number of projects that you have that are active that other people are using. And we think this is the fairest way to charge, people who only want to have 1 or 2 projects a lower price, and people who want to have 500 projects a higher price. So we have these different tiers. What we don't want to be in the business of is counting every last project. So like if you say we have a room that supports 8 projects, and then we add a 9th project in September, so you have to bill us for 1 more project for 4.5 months. We don't want to be in that game. We don't want to be that specific about it. We kind of trust our users. And so it's more about like, what's each year, how many shared projects do you think you're going to have? And let's arrive at what's a reasonable price for the number of shared projects you think you're going to have. And there's the straight up pricing. And then we will support low income pricing as well on the honor system for people who can't pay the full amount. So that's kind of how we're thinking about adjusting pricing in light of the new realities and what we're dealing with. Any questions about this? I know it's slightly confusing, but if you contact support, we're happy to work with you and figure out how to get you in Miradi Share with the right subscription that works for you and for your team and for your organization. Any questions about that?
Can wait here and see if there's questions with regards to the payment or subscriptions model. There are a few questions that I would then circle back to around Miradi Desktop and how long we'll support it. Yeah. Do you have a special price for academic purposes? Nick, you want to talk to that one? That's a
Sure. So let me let me ask that question about special price for academic purpose. So what we've decided to offer is, if people are offering a formal course in the conservation standards and want to use Miradi for that course, so it has to be a formal course, we will give you a free program room. So you can have as many projects in it, with the condition that people can only use that room for work that they're doing in that course. And then when people graduate or move on, or let's say you're doing examples with real world projects as part of your course, then once the course is over, then you have to get a subscription to continue doing it. But we're going to offer, basically, if you contact us, we'll give academics a free room to try it as a part of a course. And you can also, if you want to evaluate Miradi for an academic course, you can use the free trial to try things out. Caroline had a note that Laura developed an app a few years ago. We do have, so that's back to the idea of, is there a mobile equivalent? As I said in the chat earlier, with regard to mobile, it's really hard to fit a lot of information on a Miradi screen, on a screen. Miradi's phone screen. Miradi tends to be pretty complex diagrams, but there are elements that we would like to take mobile, and I think it would be interesting to work with Laura or with others to sort of develop the equivalent of what she did. I think there was also a question, Felix, about the desktop. For people who want to know.
David asked how long, will people be able to continue to use desktop and track stuff there, and then connect it to the online world? So we're like committing to keeping, for example. We're
committing to keeping desktop going for at least the next couple of years. We will support it. Part of what we're doing is we're hoping most people will be able to transition to Miradi online. We know some of our government partners, as I said before, might have some challenges with that. So that's one reason we're keeping desktop going for a while. But hopefully we can meet FedRAMP standards or other standards to allow federal folks or government people to use Miradi online. And eventually, we would like to keep the desktop running, but we'd actually like to replace the desktop, but maintain the appropriate functionality offline, so that if people are on airplanes or if they're in remote sites, that they can do things in Miradi still while they're in the field, and then come back to and link to the online. So we will keep desktop going, and certainly that functionality of being remote. At some point, desktop is a pretty old, kludgy Java program from basically the 1990s, and so we'll do our best to keep it moving, but we can't keep it in sync with everything we can do online, and that's part of why we're trying to move online. David, David, you had your hand up?
Yes, I did. And sorry, just to reiterate, the question I'm asking is about being able to work offline in Share. And I know that sounds a bit odd because it is online. Just because, I mean, this could be make or break for our teams. Half our teams are in areas with very poor internet. We're struggling even on high-speed fiber internet here with Miradi Share. So you can imagine the guys that have very little internet, how they must be struggling. Just wondering if there is a way to work on it offline, and then when they get into Signal again, then it's just basically connect to Wi-Fi and it will sync that information, is really what I was asking.
It's a great question, and we totally understand it. We are sympathetic and understand. So for now, I would say use desktop. Desktop is the best offline tool we have, and so people can then upload the way you can, so you can check in and check out your file and work, and that's why one reason we're maintaining that consistency. Hopefully a year or two from now, we would have a better offline solution than desktop, or it will evolve into a more professional system. And like I said, we're also hoping that by 2022, we're going to get Miradi into a much more robust cloud environment, so some of the performance issues will go away and be better. And believe me, it kills us too. It's one of these things that I hope you guys understand. We don't have the budget of Google or Miro or some of these people. We just can't work at the scale that those people can. And so there are sort of some hiccups or things that are not as fast as we'd like them to be. We're aware of them. Please send us the comments. We'll try to do our best, but there's limits to what we can do, which I know is not totally acceptable. I mean, we want software that performs, and we have to be performant in order to stay in the marketplace, but we're trying. Claire. Claire, did you have a question?
You mean Catherine?
Or Catherine? Oh, sorry, it's Catherine.
Do you mean Catherine? Yeah, thanks, Nick. I popped this in the chat. I'm not sure if you mentioned it. What's the timeline for development of the evidence-based stuff?
I'm hopeful that we will have the basis of those purple claims or assumptions bubbles and some of the tables first quarter of next year, and then kind of the more detailed evidence soon thereafter.
Great, and that's awesome. Thank you. And I can't remember if you mentioned anything about work planning? I know that's been on the cards for quite a while. Is that still in development?
So that's a feature. That's the last part of desktop that we need to bring online in order to have full compatibility.
Sure.
It's something we should talk to you and others about. It's, and remember, Net for a while had that working group within CMP to kind of deal with work planning. I think we need to take a hard look at work planning and how people are using it, and I think we need to take a hard look at maybe linking to other systems like Asana or things that people are using for work planning, and then see where our niche is in that. I will be honest, I think work planning is going to be 6 months out or more before we get to it, but it's something that I would love to do, but I think it's such a huge part of the whole adaptive management thing. And I think the Miradi desktop work planning was a great idea. I think it's kludgy in how it's executed, and I think we can do a lot better online.
Okay, yeah, happy to chat more about that. Thanks.
Any last questions?
Nick Molly is asking if there's a specific camel session, or did you mention one? I can't remember.
There's not one at the rally this year, but there was we did I think a CMP or a CCNet. We did a presentation about a year ago, and that's all been recorded. So maybe we can try to get you that link, Molly, if you send me a link, and we can show you that information from that session. And I encourage you to go online and go to Miradi Share, and there's a lot of stuff on YouTube as well, on Camel as well. Any last questions? All right, well, in our last 5 minutes, please take, Felix, did we do the poll? We skipped the poll, didn't we? Is it worth doing now? You're on mute, Felix.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'd say yes, definitely.
Okay, so in our last couple minutes, please fill out the evaluation form. We actually had a poll we meant to do at the end of the challenge of the Miradi challenge as well. So maybe we'll do it through Zoom. Felix, you want to fire up the poll?
Yeah, coming up now. So that's just the first question. It doesn't give you all of the questions. So once this is done, we need to switch over to question 2. Should have bundled them in one. All right. I would end the poll and switch to question 2.
We don't see it yet.
Yep. All right, I'm closing question 2. And for the last, launching question 3 and 4. That's a multiple choice question.
All right, Felix, and we should also send people the evaluation link.
Yep.
So CCNet wants us to do the evaluation form. You know, these people want to measure their progress and performance. I don't get these people. So thank you all for coming and taking time to learn about Miradi, and echoing what I think Erica said, we try to be responsive, and so info or support at miradi.org. We will try to answer whatever questions you might have.
Yeah, I just shared the link in the chat, so if everybody could click on that before you leave this call or before we close it, that would be great. If you've been to previous sessions of this rally, then you know how this works. It's important for not only us but the entire rally team to sort of see like what is working, what is not, how can we improve for the next rally. And so thank you.